everyone, and welcome back to the Racing Mentor Sponsorship Podcast. I am Jess Shanahan, and I am here with our team racing driver, Toby Joyce. How are you doing, Toby?
I'm very good, Jess. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Today we are going to be talking about sim racing and how it can be useful for not only sponsorship but also honing your racecraft. But before we kind of dive into that, just want to remind you guys that we've got 2 Instagram webinars coming up. The first one is on the 22nd of September, and we're going to be covering everything you need to know about Instagram in terms of like how to build your following, how to attract sponsors, all that kind of stuff. So that one's on the 22nd. And then there's like a bonus webinar the week after on the 29th, where we'll be covering the design aspects. So, you know, how to create branded graphics, how to edit your photos in a way, how to take great photos for Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So that's 2 webinars coming over the next couple of weeks. If you go to facebook.com/racingmentor, you'll find all of the details there, including how to buy tickets. So really looking forward to that. I know our Instagram podcast episode has been very well listened to. So hopefully this will give you guys some more information on how you can use Instagram to the max. So let's jump right in and do some quick facts. So Toby's fact for today is that his most watched film is Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah, that film rocks.
I've only seen it like maybe once or twice, maybe.
It comes from my childhood. I've got a little nephew, and he was obsessed with it, and we literally watched it 3 or 4 times a day for quite a while.
Oh wow!
I can recite the film; it's awesome. But I do love the film, so it was good.
Nice.
Jess's fun fact is that we all know Jess is incredibly organised in the office. However, she's very disorganised at home.
Yeah. Just looking around, because I record on like the floor of my bedroom because it's like the least echoey place in my house. Just looking around, yeah, that's quite evident.
Katie always moans at me that I'm not organised, though, to be fair. So I try to be.
Yeah, I just use it all for business. Like there's none left at the end of the day.
You can't use all your superpowers in one hit, can you?
No, exactly. I have to have a floor as well just to like balance me out.
Oh, dear.
So let's talk about sim racing. So obviously, this whole pandemic situation and lockdown, I think, made a lot of people think about sim racing more as, you know, the way to kind of keep sharp during the time when we couldn't go outside. So I think it's really provided like a great opportunity for people to start building something, like doing Twitch or like putting race videos on YouTube or, you know, anything like that. And I wondered what your experiences with this were, Toby, because I know that you've been thinking about sim racing.
Yeah, I've been well on the fence for sort of, I suppose, since the lockdown period to get back into sim racing. Before I karted, before I became a racing driver, I was heavily into console sim racing on Project Cars 2 and 1 when that was also about. And I was really heavy into it. I was competing in kind of like club racing on there through sort of community groups. I was competing on kind of live esports events, and I actually got down to the final before the grand final at Silverstone with the Renault Championship. So I was really into it. And I literally was on a beanbag in front of my TV. It was a bit of a makeshift setup. So the fact that you can do it on a shoestring budget was quite fun. But now we're seeing this huge influx of these really professional, really good hardware sim rigs at home, and more people are getting them. It's more accessible to get that kind of equipment. And I'm now back on my kind of journey to build back up into sim racing. I've not been obviously racing this year. I want to get back into sim racing again, like Jess said, to keep sharp. So I've got a progress of getting back there and a development of what is going to be quite a basic sim to start with, to hopefully one day get the sort of desired sim rig of my dreams, I suppose. But I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great tool to have as a racing driver these days. The fact that you can learn tracks, Jess, I think is a huge advantage because I rocked up to every track last year, having not ever tested there. On the race weekend was usually the first time I've ever even been to the track, but because of sim racing, I knew my way around and I knew how to drive it well. So it's such a valuable tool.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the point you made about starting with like a smaller sim setup, so like not, you know, an all singing, all dancing rig. You can just start on a beanbag, get a pedal and wheels, and kind of go for it. And even if you're playing something that's maybe a bit more on the arcadey side of things, or you're just doing it to have a bit of fun, you are always going to learn something about those tracks. Like, I've played Project Cars and other, you know, kind of, I've got so many sim racing, I'm putting games in air quotes here. I do that a lot on a podcast, don't I? Air quotes.
Air quotes.
um yeah, so I've got so many that I just, you know, they come on sale on Steam. I'm like, oh, I'll have that, thinking, oh, you know, I'll get my wheel and my pedals down, and, you know, maybe I'll have a go. But many years ago, I tried iRacing. I just got so angry with everybody else. I didn't even get past that first, like, little Mazda championship, just because obviously that's where all the newbies go, and
Yeah.
everyone was just punting me off, and I'm like quite happy to just sail around at the back so I can get the license upgrade. But yeah, I keep thinking about it. But when I was that brief time that I did sim racing, that was just my computer chair with some pedals and a wheel,
Mm.
which was, it might have actually been a freebie, but yeah, it's a cheap wheel. It's like 90 quid. So you don't have to have anything big. And, like, you know, you've got records from doing it on a beanbag. Like, that's incredible. So it shows that you don't need to spend tens of thousands of pounds on a sim rig to get good, or at least get some benefit from the whole thing. And I don't want anyone thinking that they should not try sim racing because they don't have the money to spend on a rig. I think just getting started is the main thing.
Yeah, I think it kind of resonates a little bit with like YouTube and video creation. People think you need the most ultimate gear to make beautiful videos, and when actually your iPhone's perfectly usable to do it. It's the same kind of principle. Yes, it would be nice to have a really good direct drive wheel with really decent strong pedals that simulated actual brake pressures. But that's down the line, right? That's the desirability later on. But you can compete and race on, you know, a much lower budget. Like I say about my beanbag story, some my friends still laugh at that now, because they would come around, have a go, and every time someone got out of the sim, you have to then adjust the the beanbag to get the right seating position. But genuinely, I think it was like 5 or 6 actual world records on Project Cars 2 on PS4. I don't know if it was the global server for everything, but I had 4 records on there to get to the top 10 in this Renault esports competition, and I think it was the top 5 that actually went to compete live at Silverstone. I got punted off in the race, and unfortunately didn't make the grand final. But you know, to think I did that on literally, like, it was genuinely like this clamp wheel system where I had a Thrustmaster T300 that was bolted to it. I'd have a beanbag with some pillows to prop up the back, so I was kind of a bit more supported, and the thing was sweaty. And when you're putting in, you know, good hour-long stints just to try and beat, you know, a thousandths of a second to get yourself into the finals and stuff, it was tough, but I learned a lot doing it. So I can't wait now to get back into esports, and eventually I've got a PC, you know, I'm going to get a PC and eventually get back into iRacing, because I think that's where the esports world's at its best, in my
Mm.
opinion.
Yeah, well, you have to keep us posted on how you get on. It'd be quite cool to follow your launch back into sim racing.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, the setups initially is going to be a little bit, again, a little bit more basic. I'm hoping to go for like a PC and VR, so I can kind of like keep it quite remote in
Mm.
my house,
Yeah,
because I've got nowhere yet to put like an actual rig. So yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'll give you guys a progress video so you can see what I'm up to,
amazing.
um, and let's hope that I can do some bits on the on the symbol.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about how sim racing can help with sponsorship. So I think a lot of people just assume that because everyone's doing sim racing, it can't, you know, provide value in any kind of way to a potential sponsor. But I think you need to look at it in a way that it's a good way of building up a following, because that following is what makes you valuable to a sponsor. So if you're building up a following on another platform, or while you're racing in the physical world, that's great, but that's obviously been quite difficult recently. So building a following in the sim world whether you're streaming on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook, whether you're just posting videos after the fact, whether you're doing something a bit silly and a bit fun rather than pure, right, I'm doing an endurance race. These are all really great ways to build an audience. And I don't know if you've kind of thought about this, Toby, about kind of how you're going to use sim racing in this way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do it purely to start with, just to get myself back in the game of sim racing. And the goal is to then start a kind of streaming, just to complement my YouTube channel, really, because I kind of want to make it a little bit more educational to help others do well at sim racing or learn, or I want to kind of bring something back to the community in that respect. But just on that note, Jess, about kind of building audience, I mean, most people, before Lando Norris got into F1, a lot of his followers, actually, he's been streaming for a long time on Twitch, and he's quite a character. He's quite fun. He has a lot of giggles and laughs on his Twitch stream, and people know him. But during the lockdown period, for those that probably are aware, the F1 esports thing was quite a big thing for Formula One, because they streamed it live on Sky Sports, and it was pretty big. And something that I found quite apparent on there was with regards to Charles Leclerc, because not many people really knew him, or I certainly didn't. And I think this whole kind of esports thing that they've done, and the fact that he then had his own live Twitch stream, I got to know him, and he really come out of his shell on his Twitch stream. So it was actually quite nice and accessible to see someone that I think is potentially a future legend in Formula One. And yeah, I kind of got this rapport with him just by watching his Twitch stream. So it just, for me, shows the power of what you can do with it. And I think, with regards to building that audience, I'm sure now he's got more of a loyal fan base, because they've actually got to know him personally, rather than just the guy that drives a Formula One Ferrari and he does reasonably well. But now we know a different side to him. I think that's really quite a powerful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's something really like intimate about watching someone stream a race, like, because you get to see it all. You get to see everything that normally happens under the helmet.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable for building a really, really loyal and engaged following. And realistically, that's kind of why we're here. That's a massive part of sponsorship. If you can build, and we've obviously talked about this before, if you can build an engaged following, when you go to a potential sponsor, you can say, look, this many people watch me do these streams. Imagine what they'd do if I asked them to do something or try to introduce them to a business. They're asking questions, they're getting involved in the chat on the stream, they're giving me tips and advice and feedback on what they want to see. And having an audience like that that's super loyal is so valuable when it comes to sponsorship.
Yeah, and the loyalty thing there, Jess, is that people that follow on streams like Twitch and stuff are usually the most loyal followers that you can get, because they're prepared to sit down for however long you stream and sit and watch you and join in on the community, versus someone that's perhaps watching on YouTube channel or on social media, where they'll just sort of dip in and out based on when it's convenient for them. But it's quite powerful how big this stream world's got and how loyal the audience is.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing I do want to say, though, is that if you are going to stream or do YouTube or actually do anything on the internet, you need to find a way to stand out. So especially with like this massive influx of people who have started sim racing and streaming it or putting it onto YouTube during lockdown, it's quite a crowded market. So you need to do something that makes you stand out. So for a lot of people, and like Lando Norris is a great example of this, personality goes a long way, but you need to know how to show your personality. You need to be quite genuine and chatty and maybe a bit silly in order to build a following in that way, and it does take time. But if you don't want to lean on your personality in the first instance, then I would say look at doing something that's very different. So like that might be, like you say, Toby, doing something educational, so people will come to learn something, to on wherever you're putting your videos that support your YouTube channel, or maybe even just doing something just a bit crazy, like, oh, I'm gonna do the Le Mans 24-hour race, but I'm gonna do it in race trucks rather than in prototypes, GT cars, etc. So just doing something that's just slightly different or just having like a slightly different take on maybe your commentary or the way you film yourself or whatever it might be, I think is really important, because otherwise you could get lost in like just a sea of all of the other people who are doing the same thing. And I guess it goes back to what we were saying about YouTube in a previous podcast episode. There's no point in just putting up your race day videos because everyone's doing that. It's good to offer something else on top of that so it stands out. I don't know if you agree with this, Toby.
Yeah, completely. And just it's a case of like what you teach right from the start, Jess, about your niche and your brand.
Mm.
That's a perfect tie-in, is kind of bringing your niche and your brand involved in that as well. Because, you know, as a racing driver, it's a competitive world out there. Again, you need to stand out for your sponsors, but the same goes when it comes to gaining sort of streaming and using sim racing to actually generate an audience and build your audience. You've got to look at ways to stand out, and some of the most creative ways, think outside the box, however you want to put it, can be the best ways. There's a driver called Nicky Tim. He's a GT driver, fantastic personality. I actually started watching his streams probably about, I don't know, maybe a year or 18 months ago, when I was looking at becoming a real racing driver. And the guy's crazy. Like, he's absolutely nuts. He just does the most random things mid-race. He'll be racing along and he'll like randomly appear a prop and he does something random with it while he's like racing it, you know, on a 150-mile-an-hour straight. It'll just be like, I think he uses a like a megaphone or something, and he shouts in it and just does really random things. But
That's cool.
I've kind of got this new like love for him because he's a quality racing driver, and he comes from the Tim family from DTM, and there's a lovely history there. But actually, on his own merit, he's a complete utter dude,
Mm.
and I love that. And now I've got a kind of bit of loyalty to kind of keep like following him, and because of that, I'm now interested in his actual racing journey. I follow it more than perhaps I would have done if I didn't know that quirkiness about him, because he stays in my mind. So I think that's something just to kind of just take note of, guys. Try to find something that helps you stand out. Try to look at your niche and your brand that makes you different, so that you do then stay in people's minds. Because what you do in sim racing, if you can get a following there, it's only going to complement you on the racetrack, and which is why I'm trying to do this. This is why I'm going to come back to sim racing, because I think it'll be a perfect complementary thing to do.
Yeah, completely agree. And you know, as you just said, I think tying in whatever it is you're doing to stand out, or at least, you know, your sim racing career in some way, needs to tie to your wider niche and your brand, because it has to be kind of cohesive with everything else that you're doing across social media. And obviously, if your niche is way outside of motorsport, it might be a bit difficult to do. Like if, you know, you're a baker, you know, you might start every, you know, sim race with, hey, I baked this cake today and I'm going to use it for fuel before I start racing. So there are ways to do it. And like another example off the top of my head, if your niche is on the fashion side of things, you could maybe just like literally just have like the coolest outfit or the coolest accessories if you want to be in your race suit for each sim race. Or maybe if fitness is your thing, you can talk about, you know, sim racing isn't quite as demanding as being in an actual race car, but this is what you're doing to keep your body fit, whereas sim racing keeps your mind fit, if that makes sense. So there's so many things that you can do. Yeah, there's so many things that you can do, even if your niche is actually outside of motorsport. So it's well worth thinking about how you can tie all these things together so your brand is consistent across the different things that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at liveries, Jess,
Yes.
because on the sim racing world, I've seen a few liveries out there with the RM logo on, and it's
Yeah.
awesome to see. I'm actually really proud to see that out there.
Me too.
But because obviously you've got Racer Mentor out there on
Hmm.
liveries, actually in the sim racing world, just what are your thoughts on liveries to hook a business?
So I think it's really good. I think sim racing as a I was going to say as a low cost tool. It's not always low cost, but it's lower cost than actually going and racing on a real life track. So as a lower cost tool, sim racing actually gives you a good opportunity to let potential sponsors almost try before they buy, or like go in at like a lower cost to kind of show them just what you can do. And actually, I think that, you know, a lot of people have put the RM logo on their cars because they want to support what we do here, which is lovely. And thank you all so much. But it's also, you could go to a potential sponsor and go, look, I'm going to put your logo on my sim car. you've got then some great content for social media, which is super helpful, especially if no one's been to a racetrack in a while. But it's also, you could also do the other stuff around sim racing that can help a business to kind of stand out. So even just giving them shout outs, the usual social media stuff, it's not going to be particularly high impact, but if you've got an engaged audience, I think it'll work. But I think sim racing can also be a really good platform as well for if you are doing a wider sponsorship pitch that includes racing in the real world. I think it's so cool to mock up your race car, your real life race car, on a sim game with the correct livery, just to show them what their car might look like. And I think sometimes that's better than just like an illustration or a render, because
Definitely.
you could even send them a video of their branded race car driving at their local track, and you can say, imagine what this would look like in the real world with you at hospitality with a glass of champagne in your hand, and you can really help them build the picture. So I think liveries can be such a good hook for a business on so many different levels.
Yeah, I mean, architects do that in the digital world with properties
Exactly.
that they build and design. It's the same thing. It's just a race car's the property that,
Mm,
and you're showcasing that to that sponsor what that could look like.
yep.
It just helps build that imagination. That could really help sell your sponsorship for the real life quite easily. So yeah, I think that's a really cool point there, Jess.
Yeah, I just like it. I mean, as a business owner, I like seeing my logo on cars, and I like seeing my logo on sim cars just as much as real life. So it's definitely something that you can use to kind of hook a business. It's not going to be the thing that gets you 5 or 6 figures, but it can be a really, really good entryway into speaking to a business.
Yeah, most definitely. And just something I was thinking about while you was chatting there, Jess, is like just to bring the business more directly involved with sim racing. Let's say they've got a relatively young workforce at the company that you're pitching to, and some of them might enjoy Gran Turismo or more console type sims. You could even bring in like a way to engage their staff and have like a kind of little community group of, you can set up your own esports sim racing event at home.
Hmm.
So when they go home, you as the racing driver that's sponsored by that company could organise like a little club meet online, a little competition, and hopefully you'll beat them all. It'll be bit of a pressure to beat them, but they're going to go back to work the next day and chat to their bosses and say, "Oh, by the way, Toby actually organised this thing
Hmm.
for us, and we all competed and had a good crack. I got to chat, get to know him, and that just only ties in with what you do as a racing driver. Then you're actually then being more involved with them as a company and their staff, and bringing the engagement side in, which is some of the strategy I use to help my sponsors out.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the big benefit there to a business owner, if you want to pitch this, folks, is the building. If everyone's still working from home or partly from working from home, employee morale can go down because it's a bit lonely. So if you've got something that brings all of your employees together digitally, so a sim racing championship where they can all get on Discord or whatever kind of chat that they want to, they can all have a bit of banter. It's a bit more relaxed, and it elevates that morale once more. So it's so valuable for kind of stopping that loneliness of working from home and doing it in a way that's a lot more fun than just forcing them to come on to a Zoom call at lunchtime while everyone eats, which I know a lot of businesses do.
Yeah,
So yeah, definitely bear that in mind. That's a great idea, Toby.
cool.
So let's just look at the different kind of activities that you can do within sim racing. Like that's a great idea for building employee morale, but there are, bigger, wider events that you can kind of do to bring sim racing into the real world. And there are so many businesses out there that do like, oh, everyone come along. It's maybe a charity event where we're all going to do some racing kind of thing. And there's no reason that you can't do that in lieu of a track day if you can't, if you don't have the money to do a track day or the car or whatever resources it might be, you could maybe do a sim event where maybe you get a partner to bring along a load of rigs, everyone comes together and you can race, and it's actually quite a COVID friendly way of doing things because you can all be quite separate.
Yeah,
So I think that's, again, a really valuable way of bringing people together and giving businesses the more like traditional benefits that you might get from real world racing, but using kind of sim racing as the tool for that. And I think, you know, there's lots of events that you can do like that, even if you have one sim. Obviously, maybe not at the moment, but having one sim and doing something where they have to beat the racing driver, I really like that. I actually went to an event last year that was literally just like, I think it was a talk and some networking, but they had a sim there because the company who were outside of motorsport actually had a lot of motorsport clients. So it was an accountancy firm. And yeah, anyone could just kind of hop on the sim rig and have a go. And it was just a really good way of getting people chatting and mingling. So it works so well as like a networking tool. So, you know, maybe you could organize something that brings all of your different sponsors together so they can maybe do business, but you've got the sim rig as an icebreaker. Or maybe that's, you know, your sim rig is something that businesses could have on a stand at a trade show to get people to, you know, leave their email address to have a go to try and win something. There's so many opportunities for that kind of real world stuff that can be done with a sim rig.
Yeah, they're fantastic, aren't they? They're so useful.
Mm,
And just using it as an icebreaker like that is a really big tool. And if you're not, if you haven't got a sim that's good enough to use for that sort of event, there's lots now of companies that you can hire them in anyway. So if you want a really high end rig, you can
yeah,
actually hire them in for quite an affordable cost. And as long as you price that into your sponsorship budget, you can have an amazing sim, and you haven't got to worry about bringing your own if you're worried about bringing your own. And it's just such a useful tool. I too have been to events where there's been sim rigs, and of course everyone's itching to have a go, and yeah, it's perfect.
yeah, absolutely. And then there's obviously the building your following, which we've already kind of talked about. Having those engaged followers is something that you can basically sell as a massive benefit to a business, just as you would if you were building followers in any other way, which we've obviously talked about extensively on this podcast and in other Racing Mentor formats. But you know, even if you have a small following, if they're engaged, it means that they will listen to what you have to say. So if you find, you know, a great product that you think that audience would be interested in, and that's important, you can't sell, you know, baking gear to your fitness audience, or you might, I don't know. Depends what you're baking. But you know, if you find a product that really, really fits with your niche and your audience, even if you only have maybe a couple of thousand followers, if they really, really love what you're doing and they're listening to you and they trust you and there's lots of loyalty there, if you suggest that they buy something or suggest that they do something, they probably will. So use that power wisely. It's very, very good for sponsors and very, very beneficial to say, look, you know, my engagement rate is X, is way more valuable than, you know, my follower numbers are huge, because huge follower numbers doesn't always mean engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to our conversation about the sort of live TV coverage. You know, however many million people watch that, how engaged actually are they with the brands and sponsors with, you know, with regards to those numbers? Engagement is really the critical number in my opinion. And like you said, Jess, it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are so many ideas that can kind of come out of this. We would obviously love to hear from you in the Facebook group if you have like a little spark of an idea that you want to kind of talk through. So feel free to go post in the group if you have any questions or want to run anything by us. But before we move on to our driver of the week, I also just want to kind of labor the point a bit that sim racing is so good for improving your racecraft as well. So as Toby's already said, obviously learning a track is so valuable, but even things like braking points, you know, where you turn in a certain car, like you might not have like the same feel of being in a car, but you know, these programs and a lot of the setups are actually quite sophisticated, so you'll definitely see the difference between, you know, a Formula Ford car and an F1 car, or you know, a GT car and a Mazda. You'll know the difference, so you'll be able to judge things like braking distance much more accurately than if you'd, you know, never been on the track in any car and hadn't practiced these things on a sim. So don't think that this has to be a sponsorship tool and only a sponsorship tool. Getting some seat time on a sim is actually really, really valuable for you as a racing driver.
Just a quick note on that, Jess, actually, sim racing saved me a fortune in the Ginetta last season,
Mm,
because the sim that I was using didn't have the particular generator, but a low powered real driver is kind of what I was using in sim. I was actually hiring a sim at the time, and I had a few moments of where I got it a little bit wrong and ended up in the wall. And I could then look at the telemetry and work out what actually happened and why I went into the wall. Of course, in sim racing, that's just a quick reset. In real life,
Mm.
that's possibly 5,000-10,000, maybe more.
Yeah.
And I had a moment actually at Donington Park going through the Craner curves where the car got a little bit sideways through Craners on quite cold tyres. Got a little bit eager, but because of the experience I had in sim racing and I knew how to kind of get out of that situation, I completely avoided going off, got the car corrected, and carried on, did another lap and forgot about it. Whereas if I didn't have that experience in sim and what I learned from what actually went wrong in the sim, who knows, I could have bundled it into the wall and cost myself,
Yeah.
you know, a large sum of money out of the sponsorship budget. So
Exactly.
it just on that note, it's a great tool. I'd love it, and I can't wait to get back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't you do quite well at Donington anyway?
I did. I got my
Yeah.
first podium there.
Yeah,
Got
there you go.
P2 and P3 on the weekend. Chatted it on the front row, and that was the first time I'd ever gone to Donington Park. So
There you go.
against the field of competitors that spent quite a lot of time testing there in their cars, I rocked up on the weekend, having only done some sim racing at that track, and chatted on the front row, P2, P3, and I think overall fastest lap was I was only off by about a tenth. So I was happy. That was
Yeah,
amazing. That was
absolutely.
amazing. So
I
it
bet all the
works.
people who tested were a bit like,
I think so. Yeah, there was a few drivers on my team that were just like, because I remember doing my first actual lap on the Friday practice, and I'd beaten all my teammates by quite a considerable amount in the first session, and they were just like, "How can you just rock up and do that?" And of course, they didn't really know I was sim racing at the time, or I'd learned it in sim, and of course, come race weekend, I think perhaps some of the competitive field were a bit like, I've spent thousands here testing, because some of them had literally an unlimited budget. It seemed they had touring car coaches and stuff like that. I just rocked up and just was like, okay, let's do this. So yeah, it just shows that it's such a valuable tool, and I'll continue to use it as a tool to keep educating myself and hopefully my peers, and get similar results in the real world.
I feel like that's Toby's tip of the week is, yeah, don't bother testing, get a sim.
Yeah, just rock up. Yeah, just rock up. But it is so valuable. And I think when you mentioned the point about racecraft, Jess, when you're racing cars in real life, and for those that are listening that are potentially looking to start car racing, that a lot happens quickly when you're doing 100 mile an hour and you've got like three abreast going into one corner, or you've got like a chain of traffic in front of you, cars behind you, and someone's trying to send it up the inside, for example. That it's a busy environment, and to throw yourself into that can be really daunting, overwhelming, and
Mm,
actually your natural performance might not come through because you've just got overwhelmed by all these are kind of like this just madness around you. You just you don't want to crash. You want to finish a race. But when you're sim racing, because it's not quite like real life, you haven't got all of the outside surrounding inputs that help you calculate a move. You have to be a bit more reliant on understanding where that car might be. That experience really comes together when you actually go into the real world, because once you're in the real world and you've got more of these inputs and sounds and you can hear where things are and you can see stuff, it's really then easy to manage. It's really strange. That's certainly something I really noted. So practicing on sim in really competitive racing is a great asset when you go to the real world. And some of the guys in my team that are far less experienced in motorsport, anyway, their first season, they did have quite a few contacts and crashes because they just got overwhelmed by, someone going down the inside. They didn't know what to do, didn't know how much room to leave and that kind of stuff. So it's very valuable.
I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier about looking at the telemetry when you're sim racing and kind of working out what's gone wrong, what's gone right, how you can find more time. I think that's really valuable for looking at your data when you do get out in a race car, because there's so much that can be learned from any telemetry that you have, that when you get out of the car, especially on like a test day or a track day, or maybe even qualifying session, just to look at that and go, okay, I need to find, some tenths there at that corner because I'm braking too early. Just understanding how to do that can make it so much easier when it comes to race day to have a quick look at that data and look at where you can improve. Whereas people who don't sim race have to kind of learn that in the moment when it's stressful, when you're high on the adrenaline, and it's much more difficult to do.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency, I think, on that note, because
Mm,
going to test days are expensive racing, and things that you change throughout the day in testing and things you try, the consequences can be expensive if it goes wrong. But by even like car setup, Jess, you can make tweaks in sim, albeit that the sims are very close to real life now. You can then do a car setup that you think might work, and you drive out and you go, crack, it was all over the place. Those tweaks you can actually kind of use in the real world. You can go, well, I won't do that in the real world because I remember on sim it felt like this. And even just, although the telemetry is not going to be exactly one for one, but by analyzing it and using it as a tool to kind of go, okay, if I tried this part, if I broke 10 meters later and turned in here, get a better exit and that kind of stuff, it makes it so valuable when you go to the track, because then when you go to the track, you're kind of like a professional already with regards to setup and telemetry.
hmm
You can make quicker decisions, so that throughout the day you're making the most of the track time that you've got available. And for me personally, I had very little track time prior to qualifying in race 1 and 2, that I had to make the most of that short time I had in the car. And yeah, all of that, what I learned, I could look at my telemetry in the Ginetta and go, oh, okay, I've done that bit wrong there. If I did this, this is going to help, because I knew about it. I knew how to deal with that. So amazing tool. I think we've pretty much sold sim racing today, Jess.
Yeah, I'm sold. I
um,
want to get my wheel and pedals out
yeah,
again.
I think anyone's listening, they're probably all going to dust off their rigs, or they're going to be down at Argos getting a little Logitech or Thrustmaster at some point today. Um, but yeah, get involved, guys, and like I say, I'm going to do some videos of my progress back into sim racing. It's going to start off again like a very basic sim, just to show you that you can compete in race with very basic setups and have fun with it. And yeah, I'll show you my journey of where I end up with sim racing. But yeah, show us your sim rigs. Chuck some pictures on the Facebook community group. It's really cool to see what you guys have got. I know we've got some drivers already that are on the community that are really heavily into their sim. So it'll be cool to hear from you guys of your thoughts as well.
Absolutely. And that actually leads us on nicely to our driver of the week. So
It does.
this is someone who has actually been in the group for a while. He's been through the 6-week success course. He's a sim racer and he's also a drifter. So James Moore is our driver of the week. So congratulations, James. You're joining a rapidly growing, very exciting club of drivers. So welcome. I obviously worked with James doing the 6-week success course, and he is just one of those people who gets his head down and works hard. And he's not kind of afraid to invest in himself and try new things. And he's doing all the right stuff. So he's doing the side hustles. He's converting product sponsors into monetary sponsors. He's doing the sim racing to kind of keep himself kind of in the game during this strange time. So yeah, congratulations, James. If you guys want to follow him, he is on Instagram as JDM_Jimmy_drift. So yeah, give him a follow. His Instagram's actually really good as well. So a good example of kind of how to do that as well. And he's got a great looking sim car on Gran Turismo. And I'm a little bit biased because it does have the RM logo on it. But yeah, give him a follow, and congratulations, James. Welcome to the club.
Mega, yeah, congratulations, James. Just to point out, actually, James's brand is on point. Like, everything about what he does is super cool. And drifting looks pretty awesome. I've never done it. There's something quite cool and spectacular about seeing a car absolutely sideways with smoky rear tires. But yeah, talented lad. Got some really cool stuff happening. And yeah, good luck for your future in the RM club, and congratulations today to become one of our winners.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone. As always, if you have any questions, you can email me directly, jess@racingmentor.com, or you can go to Facebook and search for the Racing Mentor sponsorship community. We're creeping up on 1,000 members. So it's a really nice sized group for, obviously I'll weigh in with any advice and tips if you have a question, but there are so many talented drivers who have done it all with sponsorship or are going through their journey that can give advice as well. So if you ever do have a question or you just want to talk to some drivers, that's the place to be. So it'd be great to see you there. Next week, we are going to be talking about how to choose the right championship. I'm really excited about this one because it feels slightly separate to sponsorship while still relevant. So, Toby, I know you're excited about this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I'm in that point right now, where I'm looking at next season, and placing exactly where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. So there's going to be quite a lot to talk about there, and yeah, it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will see you all next week. Thanks for listening.
Take care, guys. See you soon.